the successor of the revolutionary cause. The sun was lazy. Yumi's scalp was itchy after being exposed to the sun for a long time. Wang Lianfang was still having a meeting with his granddaughter, while Yumi kept scratching her head, getting more and more itchy. Yumi thought, wash my hair then. The decision was made on a whim. Yumi called Yu Xiu to the patio. This girl was even lazier today. She was listless all morning and lay in bed whenever she had free time. Yu Xiu was not lazy, but had a bellyache. Yumi asked Yu Xiu to pour her water. When Yu Xiu walked, she always had a look of pain on her face, as if she was enduring something. Yu Xiu set up the basin for Yumi and started to wash Yumi's hair. Her two hands were placed on Yumi's head, half-heartedly, on and off, and her fingers were not swift. Sometimes they were very hard, and sometimes they were limp, and they had to stop for a while. Once she stops, Yu Xiu's throat always seemed to be blocked by something, making it difficult to make a sound. In the end, she couldn't make any sound anymore, just kept breathing. Yumi was a little impatient and said, Yu Xiu, what's wrong? Yu Xiu didn't speak, but was like, in her throat. The time when Yumi really realized that something was wrong with Yu Xiu was rinsing her hair. The second time, Yu Xiu should have poured the water into the basin, but Yu Xiu didn't. Instead, she squatted down, looking straight and motionless. The movement in her mouth was quite loud, as if it was being burned. Yumi noticed a few beads of sweat hanging on Yu Xiu's forehead and said, Why are you still wearing it? Yu Xiu didn't move, but her eyes were particularly stubborn, and she slowly backed away to the wall. As soon as Yu Xiu reached the wall, she seemed to have found something to rely on. She leaned against the wall, closed her eyes, and opened her mouth wide, but there was still no sound. Yu Xiu put her hands inside the coat, untying, tugging, and pulling in a panic. It was a cloth belt. Yu Xiu just closed her eyes, opened her mouth, and pulled the cloth strap out little by little, more and more, and longer and longer. It was a bit like magic. Later, Yu Xiu took a long breath and spoke out this time. Yumi heard Yu Xiu say, Oh, it's like being in excruciating pain, but also like being extremely happy. Then she held back and stopped making any movement. Yumi realized that something was wrong and felt that the matter was serious. She walked up to Yu Xiu and covered her head with water dripping from it. Yumi carefully put Yu Xiu's coat, but Yu Xiu didn't struggle this time. Yumi said sternly, Yu Xiu, stand up. Yu Xiu endured it and only twisted her neck with her eyes closed. Yumi pulled Yu Xiu up and said, Stand up! Yu Xiu stood up with strength. The belt of her pants were loosened, and her pants slipped down just as she stood up. Yumi lifted up her coat and lifted up Yu Xiu's shirt. Yu Xiu's huge belly bulged horribly in front of Yumi, which was dazzlingly reflected by the sun. Yumi lost her voice and said, Yu Xiu! Yu Xiu tilted her head and looked at Yumi squinting, just trying to breathe. Yu Xiu leaned on Yumi, slowly knelt in front of Yumi, and said softly, Sister, I can't hold it anymore. Yumi grabbed Yu Xiu's hair and said, Whose is it? Yu Xiu said, Sister, I can't. Yumi grabbed her hair and pushed it down. Yu Xiu's face looked up. Yumi asked frantically, Whose? Wang Lianfang spoke from behind Yumi. Wang Lianfang said, Yumi, stop asking. Anyway, it is the successor of the revolutionary cause. The next morning, Yu Xiu gave birth to her son at the People's Hospital of the county. Yu Mi asked the doctor to induce labor for Yu Xiu, but the doctor refused, as the right time has passed and it was too dangerous to induce labor at this time. Yu Mi is Yu Mi after all, never panics. She held the letter of introduction written by Guo Jiaxing to the director of the county people's hospital and handled everything in an orderly manner. But Yu Mi had a mind that she wanted to personally confirm whose the child in Yu Xiu's belly was. Yu Mi tortured her along the way, and she slapped Yu Xiu more than a dozen times on the speedboat. When she was tired of slapping, she then pulled Yu Xiu's hair and even took a handful of it. Yu Xiu was very stubborn and just didn't say anything. The corners of Yu Xiu's mouth were bleeding, and even Yu Mi couldn't beat anymore. But Yu Xiu refused to say anything. Yu Mi was crying and scolding. I've never seen such a cheap. After sending Yu Xiu to the delivery room, Yu Mi was tired and sat quietly on the bench in the corridor with the speedboat driver. Yu Mi took her daughter from the driver's hand, sighed twice, and closed her eyes weakly. But Yu Mi's eyes opened again, turned around to look at the driver, slowly stood up, and suddenly knelt to the driver. The driver was startled and was about to pull her up when Yu Mi spoke. Yu Mi said, Master Guo, please hide it for us, please. The driver quickly knelt in front of Yu Mi and said hurriedly, Mrs. Guo, don't worry, I guarantee it with my party spirit. Hearing this, Yu Mi stood up and sat down again, but her mind began to ponder the doctor's question. How to deal with the child after it is born. How to deal with it. I don't even know if it's a boy or a girl. After all, she is young. Yu Xiu gave birth to her child in less than half an hour, very smoothly. The doctor walked to the door and put down the large mask on her face. Yu Mi walked up, took the doctor's hand, and asked, Is it a boy or girl? The doctor said, Boy. Yu Mi stopped talking, feeling an unspeakable sadness in her heart. Yu Mi said silently, You are capable of this, low-grade thing. The doctor looked at her and was still waiting there. Yu Mi's lips moved a few times, then she sighed and said, It's better to give it away. After everything was taken care of, Yu Mi walked into the ward and stood in front of Yu Xiu with a green face. Yu Xiu's face was bloodless. Her face was paler than paper, and she had no strength at all. Yu Xiu stretched out her hand from the quilt and said softly, Sister, let me see the child. Yu Mi didn't expect Yu Xiu to have the nerve to say such words. Her face immediately turned purple, and she blurted out, Yu Xiu, save your face, please. Yu Xiu gasped and swallowed, but she was particularly stubborn. Yu Xiu said, Sister, please. Yu Xiu's weak fingers had already grasped Yu Mi's arm. Yu Mi shook it off and said, Dead. Throw in the latrine. What good things can you give birth to? After hearing what Yu Mi said, Yu Xiu's eyes turned wide and straight. Yu Xiu was unwilling to give in. She supported the bed with her arms and wanted to get up, but her neck had no strength. Her head hung there, and her messy hair also hung there. Yu Xiu tilted her head and said, Sister, help me. I'm going to take a look, just take a look, and I'll die with peace of mind. Yu Mi threw it away, sneered, and said, Death? It's not that I look down on you, Yu Xiu. You would have died a long time ago. Yu Xiu held on for a while, but finally she relaxed and lay down without moving, completely solid. Yu Xiu's beautiful eyes stared at the ceiling, unblinking, and her gaze was surprisingly clear and bright. Yumi looked at his biological sister and suddenly felt a burst of despair. She was so sad that she couldn't hold it back and burst into tears. Yumi covered her face, gritted her teeth behind her palms, and said, "Our entire face is lost by you."